Hey everybody, it's Becca at So Darn Twisted. I thought I would actually get around to doing this before I forget. So I promised a mini tutorial on how to create this effect that we have going on with the steampunk junk journal that I made. The metal plate part of it. And I thought, okay, well, do it now, otherwise I know what I'm like, I will forget, it'll go on the list. I might as well do it while I've still got pretty much all the supplies that I used to hand to make these parts for this journal. So this is a mini tutorial. I am going to be going through it all step by step with you, but we're not going to be creating something as sort of large and intricate as that. We're going to create something on a smaller scale that just gives you the tools that you need to get as creative as you want with it regards to the intricacy of the design itself. So let's get started. Alright, so to get started, let's run through the materials that you're going to need. You're going to need some metallic shapes, or some, metal themed shapes, pipes, cogs, gears, anything like that you want to be on your piece. If you're putting, like the cover of the steampunk journal, if the thing that you are making is going to lay flat on the cover and completely flush with it, then you can get by with just using card. I did that for the panel on the front. The frame is made of 1.5mm mount board, but obviously I think you can use like 1.5mm chipboard as well, like that you cut on the Cricut, but this is just mount board. It's the same stuff I used to make my custom covers with. So yeah, you'll want some of that if, like on my spine, I had it raised up above the eyelet holes. So if it's anything like that that's not going to be sat in contact, you want something with more rigidity to it than card. So either way, you will still want some scrap card though. You're going to want yourself a paint palette, a ruler, a scoring stylus, pencils. A couple of different types of pencils here, but you can get by with just a regular old pencil. My only regular old pencil, the tip broke so earlier on, so I'm not using that one apparently. I can't be bothered to sharpen it when I have lots of other types of pencils. You're going to want some brown acrylic paint. The darker brown that you can find, the better, but if, like me, you don't tend to use colours very often and you've just got a kit of different colours, the darkest brown that you have is fine to go with some black, and we can darken it down that way. So I'm going to show you how to do it that way. And you're going to want some really vivid orange acrylic paint as well. You're also going to want a paintbrush, an emery board. Yes, I know, bear with me, you are going to want an emery board. Some scissors, and just an old dish sponge that you can tear up and use. I didn't have any old ones, so I've had to start using a brand new one. But when they're done after a week or so at the sink and you think, oh, I'm done with that now, my husband and I both use them for painting things, so they're not just going straight in the bin. And lastly, you're just going to want some glue. Any type of glue that you have that glues card is all you need. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take a scoring stylus or similar, and we are going to score some lines on your base piece. Now, the thing to remember here is get them nicely deep, but make sure you don't go through your base material. Now, you don't want them to be all parallel and of equal size and shape, unless you're going for a uniform look to it, in which case obviously then yes, feel free. But for the most part, we want to keep it quite irregular. You don't have to worry about measurements or anything like that. You're just really going with it all nice and randomly. And obviously, if you've got a small base, then keep the section smaller so that you've got more of them. If you are having a big base, you can make much bigger sections. And anything goes. It's entirely up to you. I'm just going to do a few. I'm not going to go absolutely nuts because, you know, I'm not keeping this as a finished piece. This is purely a process for you guys to follow, which is why I'm just using scrappy pieces of things. Okay, so now you should have these lines because of all the scrappy. There you go, you can see. I've got all sorts on this piece of scrap. Now you're going to take the same stylus tool, and in each corner you're just going to push down a bit to create like a divot. If the pieces are longer, go in each corner, but also space a couple more down the length. Doesn't have to be evenly spaced, doesn't even have to match on the opposite side, because as I say, that's the beauty of steampunk things and grunge, is that, you know, it doesn't have to be all wonderful and precise. It's grungy, that's the point. It's grubby, it's irregular, you know, and nobody cares. Nobody's actually going to be inspecting what you do anyway. Not even me. I don't care. I'll just be chuffed that you tried it. But I know a hell of a lot of people who make journals love the grunge look, but don't necessarily know how to do something like this. I've done it before, but it's been a long time, and it was only after convincing my husband to paint the cover piece. I did the side piece, but I convinced him to do the cover piece of the other one, of the journal, sorry. And he was like, well, you already know how to do this, so why are you getting me to do it? Oh yeah, fair point. So I kind of went, oh okay, so I have to do it then. So now you'll see all those little dinks in there. Perfect. That's what you should have now. Then leave that piece. You're going to go on now and cut some scrap pieces from some plain card. Now, you don't need, again, you don't need regular shapes. You don't need anything. Don't worry if the lines are straight or if they're crooked, that's fine. Just make sure that you've got different sizes and different shapes, because we are going to use this to build texture. So you can be really rough with it, as you see. So same process as on the base piece, just putting those little divots in and just quickly bash your way through these. This is the beauty, isn't it? No precision needed. People like me who think, oh, but I can't paint, but I can't do these things, and it's like, you can when you don't have to worry about how scruffy it is. Gotta love a bit of scruffy. Okay, and one more, and then we'll call that done. Okay, so with these pieces, you're going to intersect them with your grid lines and stuff on this base piece. So you don't want to cover up too many of your lines and corners. So just kind of have a think about where you're putting them, you know. And what I tend to do is just sort of overlay them, and then just check that I'm happy with the configuration, because you might put them down and then think, oh, actually that piece would have looked so much better if it was over there. So if you check before you glue them, you could stand more chance of being happy with where they're sitting in the end. Okay, I'm just gonna, oh, I've got a little piece here from my leftover bits that's already got divots in it, yay, but it's a bit too long. So let's just, that's the other thing as well, even if you do have to redo a piece, it's that simple. It's a couple of seconds. Yep, okay, right, happy with those. Grab your glue, slap them down. Don't worry about your glue being neat and tidy. Do not worry if it starts to seep out of the edges. That will be covered in paint, and if it leaves a texture behind, great, grungy, you know. Before now, when I've done something like this, I've actually used glue and just kind of smooshed it around on there, on my surface, and let it dry just to add texture. So I think that was probably what's on this piece actually, is where I was doing a test run before I did the side panel, maybe. I can't remember. I've slept since then. Once I sleep, it's like I have a hard reset on life, you know. I barely remember who people are once I've had, 6 hours sleep. I don't know about you guys. Right, we're nearly there. Again, don't worry as well if you've got like bits that aren't as glued down, you know, that you can see a gap. It's fine. It's just more texture, you know. And rusted old metal does have a tendency to, you know, lift and what have you, curl up at corners, you know, if it's particularly battered and bent up. Well, that's good. So now you should have something that looks about like that. I've also I've used the piece specifically that had the holes in from where I cut out the bolt heads, because I can also show you how to do around the edges. Now these are just like the scrappy crappy bits I have left over from my main piece, but that's okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to just glue those in place. I'm not going to worry about alignment and stuff, you know, for me, because as I say, this is just a throwaway. So I don't care how the pieces are, you know, how they go together or don't, as the case may be. I'm not trying to connect pipe work and the like, but you know, when you guys come to do it, you're probably going to want to make sure that things line up right before you glue them down, which is what I did with the other one. I had everything on a dry lay first, and then if I knew I was happy with it, then I just went down systematically piece by piece and glued it down. But yeah, I'm not worried about that for this one. It can just be like messy play for Becca. All of these were cut out on the Cricut as well. I don't have the patience to sit and cut anything like this by hand. So if you do have a Cricut, you can just do like I did, roll out a whole sheet, you know, a whole mat of just component parts, and then just pick and choose the ones that you want to use on your project. I'm only going to throw a couple more of these in because I don't need any more than that. Oh, just going to shove that down. There we go. Right, a couple of tiny bits, and then yeah, done. And again, these are just for showing you how to do the detail parts. I really hope actually that my voice manages to pick up right on this video. I do apologise, I'm still struggling, but the need to record a video was way greater than the need to rest my voice. Okay, there we go, that's fab. Right, so real messy, real grungy, fabulous. So give that a minute to just let that dry. So once your glue's dry, go ahead and get yourself some just black acrylic paint. Just doesn't matter if you dispense too much at this point either, because you'll be using more a bit further on. So we're just gonna roughly go over this with black acrylic just to give it a solid base. And as I was saying earlier on, the glue was going to be covered by paint, so you know, all this does is make everything the same, you know, kind of matte effect finish that you want for the rusted metal, because we add shine later, because then it's shine that we can control rather than shine that's just on your base material, which is always better. So I know I haven't put anything up there, but I'm gonna just do it for the sake of knowing that I did the whole thing. Okay, and again, we're just going to give that a minute to dry. Acrylic paint, when put on thinly, takes, you know, a minute or so before it's completely dry. So we'll just leave that there and we'll come back to it in a second. Alright, so now you should have something that looks a bit like that. All painted, a bit grungy, a bit scruffy, but doing okay. So now, first thing you're going to do is I was going to do that then, and that's not what I wanted to do. Now, it doesn't really matter. You could do this one way around or the other way around, but I found that I like to do it a bit of both. So I'm going to do a little bit to start with. So you're just going to take a graphite pencil. This is where your emery board comes into play. You can buy graphite powder, but this is a much cheaper option. So what you're going to do is just get some of that on your gloved fingertip, and you are going to just go and kind of rub this around the edges of the detail pieces. Doesn't matter if you get it on the pieces, don't worry. Again, you don't have to be really precise. This is just kind of a rough start to adding your own metallic kind of feel, so that it looks like it was metal at some point before it became just this big rusty grungy mess. So just kind of push into the lines, if that makes sense, just, you know, sort of into the details rather than just going across the whole thing. Try to kind of, you know, come up like that along those edges, and that picks out the edges much better if you do it that way. What I'll do is I'll show you if I can just get the camera, if I can just get a little bit closer in for a second. I just have to remember to focus again when I zoom back out, because I've actually lost whole tutorial videos that way. So you have your edge piece and you are just flicking up the edge of the pieces. You're not, you know, so something like this edge, you can literally just, you know, do this, and you see how it's just picking out the line and a little bit on top of the line. That's effectively what you're doing by just kind of going along and just pushing against the edge of your detail piece, and then just add more graphite as needed to the emery board. So if it starts to look a little bit like you're not getting quite as good result, just put a bit more and just start again. Okay, I'm going to remember to focus back out again. Yay! Because now I can actually see what I'm doing, which I can't otherwise. Okay, so this is just the first stage of that process. You know, we're going to do that again at the end. This is just a first pass, but this is, once you get the hang of how to do this, it is really quite quick and simple to do. You will just, you know, bash through this in a few minutes once you know what you're doing and you've just done it, you know, once or twice. Okay, just get that along those edges there, because it just does look nice, I think, when the edges are done as well. And then we'll just take the last kind of little bits and put in some random underneath metallic as well. It's going to sit under the majority of the paint, but little bits of it will just peek through. Okay, so I'm kind of happy with how that's looking now. You see how you're just starting to pull out those edges. So now just kind of just smoosh little soft bits around, you know, on the panels and you know, sort of in the background. Try to avoid the detail parts too much at this point, just a little bit. You don't want to swamp them. And then around the sort of more open areas, you can go a bit more crazy, you know, and have a nice base to work on. Okay, so that's how we're looking now. Are you with me? It's so easy, and this is where it gets really messy and fun. So you're going to take your brown paint and get a little bit of that into your palette. Ooh, a bit more than I needed there. You don't need a massive amount. And then because my brown is quite light, as I say, I'm just going to take up some of that residual black and just mix it in. I didn't put it in over the black because I want to be able to keep control of how much of the black is going in. If I put it over the black, it can easily end up too dark, you know, and then you have to keep adding more brown and trying to compensate for the black, and it's not a good way to do it. You end up wasting a heck of a lot of paint that way. You may find that you need to add more black, and you know, that's fine, but better that than throwing paint away because you've mixed up far too much of it. I'm just trying. I can't actually see because of the way the light sits on it. I can't see when it's ready or not. There, it needs a little bit more. To you guys, that probably looks really, really dark, but oh, as I've just put that in the wrong piece as well. Look at that. So I'm just going to take some of that out. After all that, saying all that, yeah, I can't even remember what I was going to say. Oh yeah, my husband and I both found when we were recording the time-lapse video is that because of the light that we have to use for you guys to see, we can't really see what's happening. The camera in the way, and we can't get overhead, and you know. Okay, that's looking good. That's looking good. So we are now going to take some of our sponge, just a sort of, you want it to be rough, you don't want the smooth sides anywhere, so you just want a nice rough crappy piece basically. And you are going to take the paint, and then you're going to kind of dab a lot of it off again on, you know, you can use it just on card or, you know, whatever, but if you've got a spare bit of space on your paint palette, dab a lot of it off. And now for this bit, you're just going to be dabbing around, not carefully, you know, not to any set pattern or amount, but that's the reason why you want most of the paint back off the sponge before you get started, because you can add more. Taking it away is harder. So we're just gonna splodge loads of this, but just gently. Alright, so again, with that light being the way that it is, I'm hoping you guys can actually see what kind of effect you're getting there. So keep going until you're happy with how that's looking. If you do go over the top and you want to, you know, dab some just pure black back in there, you can, you know. You probably won't get it perfectly happy with it the first time that you do this, but you'll get there. You will. If I can, anybody can. Right, lovely. That's looking good. So now I'm just going to introduce a little bit more of the lighter brown into that, and we're just going to, she says, and it just doesn't want to come out. There we go. And I'll just throw things about and make a mess and just do a standard Becca. Right, so we're just going to mix all of that in with everything that was left behind from the previous ones, and then get rid of most of it again. Make sure you haven't got loads of it on your gloves that you might end up splodging either. If it looks like you might have, then grab yourself some paper towel and just give it a wipe over. Because, as I say, you want to be in control of where the paint is going. So now we have that lighter brown, and we're just going to put a bit less of this down. So we're just going to, again, go all round, but just don't try to get quite as much coverage as you had on the other one. So just like that. Lovely. Now I'm going to get a new piece of, oh, that piece will do just fine actually. I don't need a new piece. Just kick some of that out of the way. So now I'm just going to put a little bit of that vile, disgusting orange, and so you're looking at this point for a kind of very, very deep orange colour. You want this to, you don't want it to be like your major highlight, you just want that kind of very, very deep orange that's almost brown but isn't quite. And you're going to take your new bit of sponge and just dab up a little bit of that. Again, take off any extreme excess. Now, this is the only really fiddly part, is these next two layers. So you're going to focus more on the detail parts again, rather than your background at this point. So it doesn't matter if you get some on your background, we are going to put some on, but again, applying it where you want it is kind of the key. So don't fret if you do get some on there, but try to keep it localized into the area that you actually want it at this point, and just build it up. So we've got like this going on, a little bit more on there, and just, you know, just follow your lines. You're not trying to get it on the lines, you're trying to get it on your panels and on your pieces, but you can just follow the shapes that you've made to know where to put it. Okay, that's dandy. So then we're just gonna get just like a little corner, you know, nothing major, just a little corner, and we're gonna put some of this on to the background below, say controlled as to where you want it to go. Now if you're struggling to know, me personally, I just go that'll do, but if you're struggling to know where it's going to look best, get yourself onto Google and have a look at, you know, just Google search images for rusty metal pattern. There are lots and lots of different rust textures, you know, there is no right one, there is no wrong one, they just are. And you can just have a little look and you can see what ones, you know, like get an idea, of, you know, what to follow, where, you know, where things might sit. It's what we do, just to get a better idea. But that's looking really nice, and there you go, you can probably see that better. Right, it's nearly done, would you believe? Nearly done. So more orange, dab that around, because you want to take the edge off of it, you don't want it to be vibrant and, you know, gross. Tiny little bit of sponge, pick up little bits of that, and now we're going to just really grubby up those details, you know, really rust them, because this part is what makes them sit proud of the surface. It lifts them off of your background and gives you that definition. So we're just gonna careful around. I'm hoping you guys can see what I'm doing, but yeah, just tiny bits. And don't worry if it takes you a bit longer to do it the first time round. You know, I've done this numerous times now, between the practice run, having done it before, having done the practice run to do the spine to make sure that I was happy with how I was doing it, you know, then actually doing the spine and what have you. And so yeah, I'm a little bit more confident with it than I would have been if I'd just been doing it for the first time. I don't even remember doing it for the first time. It would have been a long time ago, that's for sure. Okay. Right, so grubby grutty. Yes. Finally, just a tiny bit more of the orange to control this. Just put it onto the brush. Don't put it straight into your palette, because you do only want a little bit. Okay. And then I'm not mixing that all the way around. I'm just going to kind of leave it smeared like it is there. And I'm just going to take that tiny little bit of sponge again. So I want this to be quite bright, quite orange, and most of the excess taken away. And at this point, I'm gonna see if I can focus on this bit for you. At this point, you are just putting in little grotty bits. Just little kind of, you know, surface rust pieces. Take your time on this bit, don't rush it, because at this point you don't really want to have to kind of, you know, go over it again with a darker colour and start from scratch, when if you just take it a bit slower, you'll be fine. See, that's looking really gnarly. So obviously, again, I'm a little bit more confident in where I'm putting it and how hard I'm pushing, but you're not pushing this hard at all. Now, if you've got pieces that overlap, give them a little bit more than the pieces that are sat behind it, because again, texture gives height, same way that light and shadow create dimension. Layering of this is exactly the same. It's lighter and darker. Okay, a little bit more on that bit there, because that's a really gross little bit. Now, when it comes to around these pieces, get a bit heavy. Get some of your darker, get in there with it, really smudge it around. And then, because you'll notice where things have got holes, they tend to have more rust around those areas. So if you do have something with gaps and holes, then do absolutely really get in there, and then just take a little bit of the bright orange and do the same thing around the edge. So for this, I can literally just take that and then just pop some of the brighter pieces around there. If you get a bit too heavy with it, rub it with your finger, it's fine. So like if I was to, you know, say intentionally go, oh, that's way too much there, you know, just feather it out. It'll be absolutely fine. There we go. Lovely. That looks absolutely disgusting. Brilliant. So, you know, those score lines that you made initially, what you want to do is just kind of go into them with your pencil and just mark in those lines and those little divots. I detest sharpening pencils. I was always that kid at school that absolutely loved it, if the teacher said that you had to stand there and sharpen all the pencils, I'd be absolutely over the moon about it. And then as I got older, it became like the worst thing ever. Why would anybody want to do this? It's horrible. So we're just going to pick up those panel lines. Just give them a little bit of a smoosh. You can make them as light or as dark as you want. You know, just go more gently with the pencil if you want it lighter, go heavier if you want them to be bolder. The line weight doesn't change, just how much graphite you actually are laying down. So again, I can't actually see where the lines are because the way that the light is set. So I'm just going to pop that back down there and hope that I am actually still focused. Just had a little check there. Fantastic. This is coming along marvelously. Can see another one there. So it's basically just whatever lines you can still see after you put your other panels on. I think that's one. Oh my days. Blind as a bat, and that's with my glasses on. There we go. Can see them. Alright then. Oh, there was one up there, wasn't there? Yep. As I say, just as much or as little detail as you want. It's absolutely fine. And if you do end up putting a bit too much down and you want to mute it back, you can absolutely just go back with a little bit of your darker brown paint and just give it a little, you know, just knock it back a little bit. It does ping a bit under the light, so it sort of seems to be a little bit more visible. But right, now we're going to go back to pencil and emery board. And we're just going to do like we did earlier on and just go around the edges to pick out those detail bits. You may find you don't have much left at all from the first run. Sometimes you'll have a lot more left over. It's every single one of these will look different, you see. It really is just down to, you know, how much you apply, how you apply it. So you might find that you've got nothing left at all from your first go, but you might have lots. I think I've kind of got somewhere in the middle. I think I may need some more graphite there. It's running a little bit low, I think. That's the beauty of this. You're not there, you're scrubbing a pencil tip on there for absolute ages trying to get enough graphite to work with. And so I can't be bothered. But we do have graphite powder, I just can't be bothered. This is easier. I'm hoping that the camera is picking this up as well, but we shall see. I'll probably look back at the video when I go to edit it all together and go, blimey, you can't even see that thing that I did. Just get a bit more going on around those edges again. Okay. How's that looking? That's almost there. Almost there. I just want to pick up around the inside of those cogs and a little bit more around some of the raised panel parts. And then we're just going to kind of, like we did before, just sort of smooch some bits on in the blank areas as well, because like I say, that's the point of you're creating the metallic aspect of it rather than what was on the card, you know, or your surface to begin with. there we have it. She says, and then throws it. But there you go. You know what? It's fine because it's rusty, so it doesn't matter. There you go. This just goes to show you make mistakes, you cover them up. It's fine. You'd never know. All right. Yeah, a little bit on there. If you've got really small pieces, you can just use a cotton bud to. Let me just grab one. You can just pick up some of the graphite and just kind of get in there, and you know, if it's a bit too small to get to with just your fingertip, you can just do that. You know, I've got a bit heavy with that, but it's fine. You can actually just rub some of it off as well with the other end, which is great. I'm just going to kill that little line down a little bit there as well. It's a bit savage. And under the light, it looks so much worse than it actually is. It looks like it's really, really pinging. When you bring it there you go. You can actually see it as it looks to the eye now, when it hasn't got light pinging all over it. Much better, right? It also looks a lot more yellow on camera as well, which is kind of strange, but yeah. So there we go. Get a little bit in behind that little cog gear even there. Right, so that is that. Now at this point you can take some black liquid ink wash, not liquid ink as in like refill ink or distress ink, but ink wash, and you can put some of that in around these edges just to give them back a little bit more depth. Let me see if I can find my husband's ink. So this is dark tone ink. So if we just put a little bit of that in there and just get that's too flat, we don't want flat, just something that's scruffy and small. We're just going to get that in there and then just kind of wash around. It looks really savage when you put it on. It looks like, oh my god, that's too dark, it's too hard an edge. It's not, trust me. It kind of fades back in to the paint. Sometimes you do this and you don't even really, like my husband said, it's barely even noticeable that you've done it. It's really just a case of give it a go. But you can pick this up in, you know, model hobby shops, or you can, I believe you could just really water down some re-inking inks. Just don't use them straight out of the bottle. They will be far too harsh, and you'll be left with just these, you know, really gnarly looking stripes all over the place, because this is a wash. It's not you know, it's not a solid pigment at all. So you don't want to go ruining it when you've got this far. But as you can see, as that dries, it just gives that little bit extra dimension. It's completely not a necessary stage. This is an optional if you want to, you know, really go to town, go nuts on it, then you can. You can also use this if you think that one of the pieces that you've done is looking a little bit solid. You can, you know, just kind of dab a bit of that on there, and that will change it slightly, give it a little bit more depth. You may have to do it a couple of times. Again, it does depend on how it dries, because it will depend largely on the surface that you have. You know, is it really light? Is it not? Where are we? Let's get a bit more over in there, or a bit more, get some over in there, actually would be the correct term, Becca. So don't worry, this is not precision painting at all. This is just chucking it on. just looks like I'm being careful. It's not, it's just because I'm trying to see what I'm doing. Okay, there we go. Now I'm hoping, really am hoping that you guys can see under this light the difference that's made to picking out the edges, to make, you know, sort of giving it some really nice depth to the overall look of the thing. But like I say, I will grab some stills as well so that you guys can see, and in case you want to just be able to have a closer look in, you know, at what I did, how I've splattered stuff around, which I can't see why you would, because I really have just splattered stuff around. But you know, if you feel like you need a look, then you have a look. You know, just for the sake of it. Now I'm just splodging bits here and there just because I can, not because it even necessarily needs it. But yeah, there we go. Okay, so I'm going to call that done, because if I will take my gloves off before I handle the journal. Grand ungloving. And here's a tip for you: if you've got gloves that are covered in paint, I used to use it when I was body piercing all the time, not that I had paint, and I would gather up all of the stuff inside and just pull one off inside the other, and then you can handle them with no paint, no contaminants on your hands. There you go, that one's a free tip. Right, so if we pull that over here, and I'm just going to zoom this out a little bit so you can just see. There you go. Looks a bit more brown because it's higher up, but if I put it side by side, so as you can see, that's all there is to it. That one has got a lot more orange on the front. That I didn't go quite as crazy on the side with the orange, but again, that is personal preference. You can really go crazy with the orange if you want to. This is how to make gnarly, grungy, rusty looking metal. I hope that you've enjoyed this one, guys, and I hope I've taught you something cool. I hope you enjoy having a go, having a play. It's like being a toddler again and getting back to school and getting the paints out. If you don't subscribe already, please do. Keep an eye out for my 500 subscriber giveaway, which is happening on the 27th of this month at 8 PM GMT. I would love to see you all there with a chance to win a nice prize, hopefully a nice prize, but I'll be doing a separate video on that once everything is in place for that one. In the meantime, happy crafting, guys, and I'll see you soon.